Let's take the prayer, please. Master of all worlds, highest power, merciful parent of compassion, in your presence, eternal one, source of strength for us, as you have been for our ancestors, we very humbly acknowledge you. What are we? What is our life?
What is our life that you have done such great kindness to us? Therefore, we place our appeals before you,
so that you may forgive
and absolve us of all our faults and
that our faults never become between us and you. And may it be your desire to prepare our hearts to feel awe and love for you. May you listen to these words of ours. May you listen to these words of ours, and may you open our encumbered hearts through the mysteries of your Torah. May this our study be a source of pleasure before your throne of glory, like sweet incense. May you shower down upon us the light of our soul's source and all the ways by which we define ourselves. May the sparks of your holy servants, through whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit, and the merit of their Torah, their innocence, and their holiness stand for us so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words. Their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study, as in the saying of the sweet singer of Israel. Open my eyes that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the Eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth. Na 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 na. Oh no no no. Na 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 na. Oh no no no. Na 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no no no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. Oh no 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 no. We're on page 361. And we started reading about this, for the Zohar, this troubling verse that tells us that Jacob preferred Rachel, and that we know from the very beginning. It's love at first sight. And we see this verse that says that Leah was hated. How could that possibly be? How could Leah have been hated? So the Zohar asks us in its own way. We were reading these paragraphs, and the answer that the Zohar gives is by explaining that Leah is Yovel. Leah is the Jubilee, and therefore she is concealed. She is incomprehensible, and it's only in comparison to the love that Jacob was able to feel for Shekhinah that we could say that she was hated. It doesn't mean she was hated. It means that she wasn't loved. How could he love her? He couldn't love her because she was actually a mystery in a way that Shekhinah was not. So we're now up to come and see. The last three lines at the bottom of page 361. So we need somebody to, I see a hand. I wonder whose hand it is. Okay, Pharaoh, please.
Come and see. Lower world is revealed, beginning of all, to climb its rungs. As supernal wisdom is beginning of all, so too this lower world is wisdom, beginning of all.
Okay, so before we continue, so this is the idea now that the Zohar says, it said it so many times. The lower world, meaning Shekhinah, the lower aspect of God's being, is revealed. And by that revelation of God, it's kind of the reverse tip of the iceberg, right? The lower tip of the iceberg for us to be able to discern. And that then allows us to climb the rungs, to go up higher and higher. But first we have to start someplace, right? We have to start with the ladder being rooted on the ground. And then we can go up higher and higher. Just as the highest level wisdom is the beginning of all, so that's where we can speak of any kind of beginning. The lower rung, the lower level of divinity, is in a certain sense also the beginning. Even though she's the end, she's also the beginning. Right? So she is the beginning for humans. Right? From the divine perspective, the unfolding of the divine, the emanations, if you want to use the fancy term, start with Chokhmah. Chokhmah is the first solidified aspect of God that we can mention, even though when we mention it without really knowing what we're talking about. There's Keter, the turning point from the Ein Sof, from the infinite God, toward becoming a ramified God. Chokhmah is the beginning, and the lowest end of the process of God's revelation of God's own self is therefore our beginning for us of experiencing God. Okay, so here we go, Pharaoh.
So we call it Atah. You, since it is sabbatical,
Reveal.
Well, I have to unstick the pages. Revealed, higher world, jubilee. We call it who? He, since all it matters are concealed. Mystery of the
Okay,
matter.
so we'll get to the application in a second. So let's just take this in. So these are aspects of God. To use an inadequate but almost necessary approach to this, the higher aspect of God is further away and is more incomprehensible, more inconceivable. And then the lower aspect of God is closer to us. And that's the aspect that is revealed to us. So that lower aspect, also called sabbatical, Shemitah, Shvi'it, that seventh ramification of God is called Atah, you, right? Direct address. That's how we can experience God. This is our opportunity to experience God. God makes God's self available and experienceable in that guise. So that's the direct address, Atah. Who is third person? Third person means somebody not here, somebody over there, right? Maybe some of you have had the experience when there's a bunch of people talking together and one person is talking about somebody who's right there and they say he or she said so-and-so. And the person goes, what do you mean? I'm right here. He, she, third person, supposedly talks about a non-immediate presence, a presence that we can talk about, that we can conceive of in some way, but that's not really in front of us. So that's the third person. That's the distance away. That's the higher level of God. Now, this dichotomy should be familiar to us in our regular ritual practice. We have in this week's Torah reading the mitzvah of Birkat HaMazon, that when you eat, you have to praise God with a blessing. And then blessings have, proliferated in our tradition so that there are more and more and more blessings. And they take a specific formula setup, right? So when we say, for instance, when we light candles Friday night, we say Baruch Atah Hashem. We say you eternal one, you abound in blessings. We talk directly to God, right? Direct in, you, second person. And then we say Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, who has commanded us with his command, who has sanctified us with his commandments. His, he, third person. In the same sentence, we have gone from directly addressing God to then talking about God as being someplace else. And all of the commentators and all of the, all throughout the generations, this has been something that's been discussed. And, this is basically, an expression of this paradox. I wrote a little bit about it last week in the Torah Sparks. But that, that shifting back and forth between feeling God's reality, feeling God's immediacy, but then losing it and not having a sense of God in anything but in an abstract way. So some people explain it as a theological proposition, just like we have a little bit here. God, in some aspects of God, is right with us at every turn of the road, and at the same time, don't think that that God that you have some experience of is the whole shebang, right? There's the Big Bang, and then there's the big shebang. The whole shebang is much more than that. And of course, we talked about this long time ago, that this is the Zohar's proposition for what the original sin of Adam was, that he separated Shekhinah from the rest of the divine fullness. He thought that Shekhinah was the whole shebang, and that was God. No, that's a part of God, but that's not all of God. God is much more, and God is beyond the experience that we may have of God. However blessed we may be with having that experience, and we should all feel that experience. I'm not saying that, I'm saying it as a prayer. I wish it for all of us. But whatever experience we have, we should understand that we're being touched in a way that is meaningful or can be meaningful for us, but there's so much more. There's so much more, way beyond that. So that's the who. That's the third person. And paradoxically, our blessings attribute the commandments to the who, not to the you, right? The source of those commandments is from godliness as godliness. It's not some kind of like little play that was, done playing, like playing a game as a concession to us, right? It's not only from God's accessibility that God decided to give us commandments, but the commandments come out of the core of Kedusha, the core of holiness that is beyond our own access. We should understand that because we need to struggle with mitzvot. We need to struggle with the power of mitzvot, whether we can get them or not. Right? We are a free generation. We live in a free world. We do what we want. We decide. We pick and choose what's meaningful to us and what's not meaningful to us. I do it too. But I'm, thinking as I'm speaking. But there are some times when we have to acknowledge that there's a mitzvah, whether we get it or not. It comes from a source of holiness that's not just encompassed by our own comprehension, our own mind. So there's now chat. Hold on a second. Let me see what's in the chat for a second. Please move the camera so we can see your whole face. How's that? Okay. Who is Keter or all three? Who is Bina? But Bina is glued to Chokhmah and to Keter. But who is mostly Bina? Okay, Bina is the final station of the incomprehensible aspects of God, right? And she is the generating force of the comprehensible, quote unquote, aspects of God. She is the upper mother, and she is bonded continuously and forever to Chokhmah, which is the beginning, as it says here, the beginning point of when things actually get going. Chokhmah is the father, Binah is the mother, right? The rest of the aspects of God are the children. That's why she is called Leah, and that's why she has 7 children, right? She has the 6 sons, and then she has the daughter. Perfect correspondence. Okay, any other comments about this at the moment? Okay. So hold on a second. My page got turned by the fan here. Okay, so that's the concealed, right? And the atah is, to some extent, the revealed. Mystery of the matter. Beryl, back to you, second line.
Mystery of the matter, Leah, as is written. He lay with her in the night. Who? He.
Okay, so the verse says, Vayishkav ita balayla hu. That's the Hebrew. So it should have said balayla hahu, on that night. So that's the proper Hebrew. But instead, we say, for instance, on that day, bayom hahu, yeah, Hashem echad. But on that day, God will be one and God's name will be one. So, which is actually about this whole thing. The name is the accessible, right? God is the inaccessible. So one day they will be together. They will all be united. So the verse that we have in this particular story of Leah and Jacob, it's the story with the, what do you call it? The mandrakes, and there's a trade-off between Leah and Rachel, and Rachel gets the mandrakes on the condition that Leah gets to sleep with Jacob that night. So then when he comes in from the field, Leah says, it's my night. You thought it was not my night, but it is, it's my night. And then the Torah says, so he lay with her that night. That's what the Torah says. So Jacob, he lay with her, with Leah, in the night. But it, who, whatever. Who meaning it, he, third person. And it should have said, hahu, that night, right? Indicating that night. So the way that the Zohar reads it is with a comma. He lay with her in the night. And that night was, who was he laying with? Who? He was laying with who? He was uniting with Leah, with Yovel, with the concealed, with the incomprehensible, with the third person, distanced, separate reality, right? As opposed to actually feeling the immediacy of second person. Okay, therefore.
Therefore, it is written, the Levite will serve who?
Right, and that's again, the Zohar is forcing the reading to fit its way. It says V'avad Halevi hu, right? The full flow of the verses, and the Levite, he will serve, to make sure that everybody is okay, and then the rest of the Israelites will therefore not get in trouble, because the Levite will make sure that he is serving to protect the shrine. So the regular meaning of the verse, the way everybody would understand it, is who, meaning third person, that Levite that I just mentioned, he should be the one who's serving. But that's not the way the Zohar reads it. The way the Zohar reads it is the Levite serves, serving what? Serving who? Serving that concealed aspect of God. How is that so? Drawing from him blessings for all. Okay, did you read that?
No, but I
Read it,
will.
go ahead.
He, drawing from him blessings for all.
Okay. So great. So so the Levite draws down blessings from who? We said that who is Binah, right? Without getting too hung up on this, right? But the Levite draws blessings from higher up. If we take our diagram that we have at the beginning of our volume, so we have the way that, you know, the hopscotch board of the Sfirot, and we have Keter at the very, very peak, right? And then we have Chokhmah to the right. We have Binah to the left. If you go directly below Binah, what do you get? You get Gvura. You get Din. So Binah is the first manifestation of God to be placed on the left-hand side. And then if you go down from there, straight down, not in the zigzags. We usually go in the zigzags. We go back and forth, right to left to middle to right to left to middle. But there are also ways of just looking at this as three columns: a right-hand column, a central column, and a left-hand column. The Levites are Gvura. The Levites are the left-hand corresponding aspect to Chesed. Chesed is on the right. Chesed is the priests. Chesed is also Abraham. And the left-hand side is Isaac and also the Levites. Priests on the right-hand side, Levites on the left-hand side. So Binah, in some sense, is also directly influencing the Levites, straight down. The Levites don't have to, go through any kind of zigzagging to get the effluence of Binah's, life-giving energies. So now Larry wrote something in the chat. Binah has her mate in Chokhmah, horizontally, while Shekhinah has her mate in Tiferet, vertically. Does this matter, or is this just a picture? But also, when Yaakov lays with Leah, Tiferet is now married, but mating with Binah. So the last part of this we'll get to in a second. So let's just hold it in a second, hold it off. But the first point is graphically absolutely correct. And then the question is, does the graphic have any significance for us? Does it help us think about things a certain way? And I would suggest yes. I mentioned it earlier as well. There's a main distinction, forget about horizontal, vertical. There's a main distinction between the couplings of Chokhmah and Binah and the couplings of Tiferet, Yesod, Ze'er, as it's sometimes called, in other places and later, and Shekhinah, Malchut. Right? The difference is a very, very important. I don't know what adjective to use, but one is contingent and one is essential. So the union of Chokhmah and Binah is essential. It just is. It is not subject to any qualification. It's not subject to any challenge. It's not subject to any change. It is eternal and it is fixed as being what it is. That's why when David asked before, is it all three? Is it whatever? It's almost not meaningful to ask those kinds of questions, because Binah is glued, as I said before, is glued to Chokhmah always and forever. There is never a separation between Chokhmah and Binah. They are, to use a kind of an image from innocent childhood, They are the parents who are never, ever going to be separated from each other. Right? They will always be together. They are the source of everything that we feel gives us security in the world. So Abba and Ima, father and mother, are never, never, never separate. That's the horizontal. The vertical signifies that there's a union between the male lover, the male divine lover, and the female divine lover that could happen, but could also be ruined. They can be separate, but they want to be joined, but they don't always succeed in being joined. They get, separated, the way the Zohar explains it, by our own misdeeds, right? They are affected by what happens below. So if there's, unrighteousness in the world, that will cause a separation between Kudsha B'richu Shchinte. Every mitzvah that we do in later Hasidic, for instance, practice is L'shem Yichud Kudsha B'richu Shchinte. I'm doing this good act, this mitzvah, in order to unify the Kudsha B'richu, which is another word for Tiferet, or for the whole array of divine aspects, with God's own Shekhinah, because God can suffer that kind of alienation from God's self in that particular way. Once God has created that touch point with human beings, God becomes vulnerable. God becomes vulnerable to us messing God up. I was talking to a friend. This is in a certain way the significance of the image of the high priest on Yom Kippur. The high priest comes into the Holy of Holies, and the high priest sprinkles blood on the curtain that leads to the Holy of Holies. What is that about? It's about so many things, right? But one of the things that it's about is that God is allowing a human being to penetrate into God's inner sanctum. That God is allowing a human being to go into God. And when that happens in the human experience, there's blood. Right? There's the first, evidence of union. The first evidence of penetration is the virginal blood that is spilt. So in some mythic way, this is what God is doing. That's what forgiveness is about. Otherwise, why should God forgive? Why should God forgive us if we do something wrong? Why shouldn't God simply say, you don't deserve to be, continued given life and all of the gifts that I give you? If you don't serve me, if you don't love me, if you don't, reciprocate all of my care to you, then goodbye. Why should God forgive us? We deserve it. Sometimes maybe we do deserve it. I hope that, with more times than not, we deserve it. But many times we don't deserve it. There are plenty of SOBs out in the world who enjoy tremendous loving blessings from God, because God is a sucker, because God has allowed us to enter into God's kishkas, and God can't get over us. God is a slave of love in some basic way. And that's the drama of Yom Kippur. How do we, the sages say Yom Kippur is one of the 2 happiest days in the Jewish calendar. Right? So what do you mean? We don't think of it usually as such a happy day. We think of it as as a stressful day. If we're fasting, it's very difficult. The services are endless. It's come on, this is a tough day. And according to the sages, it's the happiest day in the Jewish calendar. Why? Because we know that God will forgive us. We actually have God wrapped around our finger. Now, not in any particular way. We don't know, each of us, one by one, whether we are the ones who will be forgiven. But in general, en masse, God lets us off the hook every year. God forgives us all the time. Look at that dog. Look at how loving that dog is, right? There it is, right?
He's hanging on your every word, Rabbi.
He's hanging on your every, just being. Yeah. So, and we could learn a lot from dogs, but and again, don't take what I'm saying here as the complete, comprehensive, and total explanation of anything. But there's an element of truth, I hope, I think, in what I'm saying. So this is the difference between the horizontal and the vertical. God being connected to God is unproblematic. God being glued, and united with God's own self, God is united. God is one. That's never the issue. The issue is once God creates a possibility of connection with us creatures, then God has destabilized God's own self. And that's where, we, come in, and why the stakes are so high. Because this is not just a momentary question of a slip up or not a slip up. This is about, the whole gigantic, array of reality working or not. Any questions, comments? Okay. So now I lost the page here again. Where are we? Here we are, 362, yes? Okay. So now we had, okay. So now we're up to who? Supernal World, yes?
Who, supernal world, constantly concealed. Jacob, aspiring, did not cleave to the concealed, rather to the revealed. This is the mystery. He cleaves to his wife.
Okay. So Jacob, we've had this again and again. Jacob is in the dark, a little bit like Mark there. He's in the dark. He doesn't really get, and he can't, right? In some fundamental way, thank you, Mark, his justice reveals him. So why do wait? We're going to get to that in a second. This is going to be a heavy one. When Jacob is engaged in this whole drama, he can't really understand. He can't really grasp onto Leah the way he grasps onto Rachel. So Rachel is his love. So Rachel is his, Rachel is his woman now, right? Like in Porgy and Bess. And Leah isn't going away. She's not going away anywhere, but it's hard for him, or it's impossible for him to embrace her in the same way. So the Zohar, says he does not cleave to the concealed because how could he, right? Rather, he clings to the woman who he sees as right in front of him. But of course, we're working on two levels at the same time, right? Leah is Leah. Leah is also Yovel. Rachel is Rachel. Rachel is also Shekhinah. Jacob is Jacob, but Jacob is also Tiferet. So there's also a claim that's being put here in terms of the dynamics of the relationships between those divine aspects. The verse that the Zohar quotes at the end is, he cleaves to his wife. Why is that a meaningful citation here? Why is that important? So what's the note? 346, right? Look at 346.
He cleaves to his wife. Jacob, holding.
Symbolizing.
Symbolizing Tiferet, cleaved to Rachel, symbolizing the divine wife. Shekhinah, rather than to Leah, symbolizing the divine mother. Binah. The full verse reads, therefore a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh.
So there's two parts to this. There's cleaving to the wife, but there's also leaving the parents. So Jacob leaves his parents. Of course, we had that at the beginning of the Torah reading of this Torah portion, right? He runs away from home. He leaves his parents. He's going to cleave to his wife. And this, of course, is the Torah at the beginning of the Torah. This is the Torah's comment about how the way of the world is always for everybody, right? You can't just be a mama's boy. You have to go out, leave, and go cleave to your wife. So, but this on a theosophic level, on a God level, it also means that Tiferet has to leave mother and father. Mother and father is Chokhmah and Binah. Mother and father are the, constant, never to be separated parents. But the only way that you can have any generation beyond that is for the child to leave, to separate from the inseparable, to separate from the Abba ve'Ima and go away from them. So therefore, Jacob can't cleave to Leah. Not simply on the psychological or philosophical or spiritual level, because you can't cleave to the incomprehensible aspects of God, all true, but therefore also there's these parallelisms, these correspondences stack up and work together for the Zohar, so that Jacob has to leave Abba ve'Ima, has to leave his father and mother, and has to then cleave to Shekhinah and not to Leah. Let's go to one more paragraph, and then we'll come back to Mark's comment in the chat that I haven't seen yet.
Okay, that Leah was hated. From here we learn that a man hates incest with his mother or his sister, and may remain alone with his mother anywhere unconcernedly. All was concealed from Jacob, for the higher world is completely unrevealed.
Okay, so this is a repeating of a halacha in the Gemara. The Gemara is, concerned with preventing licentiousness, promiscuity, and therefore there's this whole concept of yichud, right, of being alone, a man and a woman being alone together in a room. It's not supposed to happen, and therefore at a wedding, it's actually an essential part of a marriage, of a wedding. A wedding ceremony happens under the chuppah. The bride and the groom stand under the chuppah in full view of the minyan, of the public. This is a public declaration of the establishment of a new family in Israel. But then after everything happens under the chuppah, what happens next? Yichud. Yichud is that the couple has to go off on its own, the two of them, and go into a secluded room without anybody else being allowed in the room. So yichud meaning union. They can then and theoretically, if they want to, according to old-fashioned ways, this might be the first time that they would have physical contact with each other. So this is the manifestation of something that makes it clear, oh, they're married, because if they weren't married, they wouldn't be able to be in that room together. So it's a demonstration that they're married, and that demonstration is a performative demonstration. It makes the marriage happen. So you're not allowed to be in a room with somebody else who's not your wife, if you're a man. And if you're a woman, you're not allowed to be in a room with somebody else who's not your husband. So this, of course, can cause no end of complications in all kinds of different situations. And in the very, very Orthodox community, this is a big, issue that people pay a lot of attention to. The idea that you would, if you have to go into, let's say you're modern Orthodox, and you actually go to college, and you have to have a meeting with somebody in their office, and the office and the person is a woman. How do you have a meeting in that office with that woman? It's you're secluded in the office with that person. The answer is the door has to be left ajar. The door has to be left partially open. Now, actually, these days, it's not such a bad policy in general, because we've actually heard too much about people abusing their opportunities to abuse a person in private. So, but the rabbis were super sensitive to this. So here's one of the halachic details, that there's no such thing as the prohibition of yichud between a mother and her son. Right? You might think that this would be, after all, the mother is a woman, the son is a man, so you shouldn't be able to be together. No. So in the immediate family, there's no yichud, which, of course, practically speaking, is a relief, right? Otherwise, you'd never be able to have families together. You should know that in today's Haredi society, specifically among the Ger Hasidim, they actually have gone to the maniacal extreme of separating men and their wives, for instance, at the table, at the Shabbos table. And they've gone way beyond any halachic rules, but they are so what can I say, sexuality phobic, that this is actually happening as I speak. So here the Zohar applies that halacha to this particular situation, where they say, why are we not concerned about the son and the mother being together in the same room? Because there is no worry that they'll sleep together, because nobody is suspected that they would violate such a basic incest taboo. So therefore, there's nothing to worry about. So now the Zohar applies it to Jacob. Why is Leah hated? Of course, it doesn't mean that Jacob hates her. It means Jacob doesn't want to bond with her because she's his mother. Now, of course, she's not his mother. but she is on that godly level. He is Tiferet, she is the supernal mother, and therefore the chemistry is not there. The chemistry of bonding is not there. So this is, just to conclude one more point, all was concealed from Jacob. For the higher world is completely unrevealed, right? What is that last sentence trying to say? What would we lose if we just had that Leah was hated? From here we learned that a man hates incest with his mother or his sister and may remain alone with his mother anywhere unconcernedly, right? That explains why she was hated, period. Actually, it's not at all concealed. QED. So what's the thrust of this extra sentence that gets put in? I think that the thrust of this extra sentence is that had Jacob fully apprehended all of the complicated dynamics, then of course he would want to unite with Leah. He ended up, of course, sleeping with Leah. He had to be tricked into sleeping with Leah. But the point is, he really should sleep with Leah. He actually should sleep with his mother if he understood that his mother was really this divine manifestation that all of us will eventually unite with, because she is Jubilee. She is the locus of return. We all will return to that mother. We all will come back into that motherly womb in the right time, in the right way. So that's the deep paradox here, right? That on the one hand, no, who's going to sleep with their mother? But on the other hand, no, there's going to be in the time to come, in the time of redemption, where these distinctions won't mean a hill of beans anymore. Actually, uniting will be, the right thing and the reality, right? And the erasure of these kinds of taboos, are certainly hinted at in this text. Okay, so Mark has written 3 comments. Let's see what happens here. First, his justice reveals him.
Forget the first one. I mean, that's my little story.
Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah.
All right.
What about the other 2?
What about father and daughter? Since there's no explicit prohibition of father-daughter incest. Yeah, and that's how you become king. All right, good. Yes, exactly. So what about father and daughter? So father and daughter has to be teased out of the text by the rabbis. It doesn't say specifically, explicitly, as you say, that a father can't sleep with his daughter. It says it indirectly, right? Because he can't sleep with his, with other kinds of connections, female connections, and the rabbis then make a logical deduction that the daughter is included. But you're right; it's not mentioned at all, black on white. You're right. So what I was saying a little, 2 seconds ago about a kind of a transgressive read of the ultimate times, right? When redemption will happen, that kind of transgressive set of possibilities happens in God all the time. And to a certain extent, it happens on a much lower degree. It happens in realms of holiness. So for instance, and you're going to have to help me because I'm probably going to lose my train and then you'll have to bring me back. But we're not allowed to wear wool and linen together, right? This is a taboo. In the temple, the priestly garments are wool and linen. So there's this kind of message that in the place of supreme holiness, the boundaries disappear. The oppositions, that the separations are dissolved. Of course, we have other transgressions in the pre-Sinaitic period, right? Jacob marries two sisters. That's a super no-no, right? You definitely cannot do that. But before Mount Sinai, he does. Why? Well, because it couldn't happen any other way. Of course, it could have happened some other way. We could have written the novel differently. We could have brought in another, non-sister into the mix. But if we take the line of thought that I'm playing with a little bit, this is the divine sorting out, and these rules don't apply to the divine. These rules don't hold in the same way. The union, for instance, of all of the sefirot together, before we get to the union between the male constellation of divinity and Shekhinah, it's between all of these different male foci and themselves. So before we even get to Shekhinah, we got a lot of homoeroticism going on. We've got Chesed uniting with Gevurah. We've got Netzach uniting with Hod. We've got Tiferet, uniting with Netzach and so on. So if these are all valenced as male, there's a lot of male uniting going on. So the world of taboos, in some sense, is shaken in a non-earthly realm. The non-earthly realm, either the time of redemption, or the non-earthly realm of divinity, or the non-earthly realm of the temple, right? Which is a space and a reality to itself. So there's a great danger in this. For instance, the whole phenomenon of the holiness of sin, Sabbatianism, Shabtai Tzvi, opened up this whole way of thinking, and it was then taken on by followers and so on, that in the sin is the redemption, right? Because that's the time that we're in now. The only way that we can actually get to liberation is to break down the taboos. This was also like a 60s thing, right? That was true freedom. That was true liberation, was to get out of stuff. And actually, they are still, I would say, thankfully, considered crazies or marginal. But there are people that argue for incest, or there are people that argue for pedophilia, for instance, as beautiful things.
So Rabbi, you're looking forward, but I would like you to look backwards.
Right. So
look at my last comment.
Another comment. You're on a roll.
Yeah. Because I really want to push you on this, because if you
wait, let me read it first. Then you'll give me the oral Torah. First, let me see the written Torah. But that brings up the whole dual nature of the patriarchal story. Since among the Egyptians, for example, incest was not only the prerogative of the royals, but originally a requirement. Yes, right? Okay, so there is certainly a mostly an anti-incest message in the Torah. And then the one example that you brought up before, what about father-daughter? Is that explicitly mentioned? Not quite. Some people argue simply because it's obvious. Once you read, the Leviticus list of prohibitions, and then this is a little bit of what the rabbi said also. You can't imagine, oh, so you can't sleep with your aunt, but you can sleep with your daughter. You can't sleep with your husband, with your wife's daughter, but you can sleep with your daughter or whatever. I mean, go look through all the kinship things. So there's one argument that says, yes, the Torah is absolutely fully. I mean, again, there's no such thing as fully, because what counts is cousins incest. Some people say yes, and of course we don't say so. But that definitely has an incest concept and prohibits incest as an abomination, right? That's where the word toiva also comes up. But like you say, is the father-daughter one, why shouldn't it have been explicit? I don't have a really good answer. Do I want to allow the possibility that maybe they played with the idea that father-daughter is okay? I wouldn't like to do that, simply because, again, the whole gestalt of the incest taboos that are listed are all about power abuse. They're all about the man, the head of the family, the head of the clan, taking advantage of the females. So I don't see it that way. But I have to admit that there is something of a little bit of a question about it.
Rabbi, I really, with all due respect, the incest taboos have more to do with showing reverence for the father, because the explicit statement is you're uncovering your father's nakedness. You're uncovering your father's nakedness. So it's not protecting the female; it's protecting the integrity of the patriarch.
Right. So we would have to look at the text carefully, which I have done in other times, and I would argue out of memory, without being able to go through it, that yes, that's part of it, but there are also limitations on the father, on the patriarch himself, and that's an essential part of that list of taboos. So I think it goes both ways.
But I really want to get back
to not just free reign to the patriarch.
But I really want to go back to, again, I read all these stupid books that should be on the index, right? And the books that I've been reading is about the Egyptian roots of Judaism. And I don't think you can forget that the Jews in Babylon were trying to distance themselves from their roots in Egypt. And when you get to the Zohar and you see this whole theologizing of the patriarchs, the way they're doing it, it just reminds me so much of what little I know about the whole Egyptian model. The deification of the Pharaoh. How different is that from the deification of Yaakov?
I think it is a little different, but again, I don't want to go to the extreme of saying no, it's all different. I think that absolutely there was a tremendous push and pull influence between Egypt and Hebraic Judaic tradition, for sure. I mean, I pointed it out. The whole idea of is death to be exalted, or is death to be avoided? Are the priests supposed to be the masters of death, or are the priests supposed to avoid death? So the total avoidance of human death, the total avoidance of the priests of human corpses in the Torah is, I think, unproblematically obvious to any fair reader, a super polemical reaction against the Egyptian fascination with death and the priests being involved in that. So there's a lot of influence by negation, And I would say what you're bringing up about incest is also the case. So then, that's what I'm saying, that there's this little, splinter in our fingers, like, why the heck doesn't the Torah then go all the way? And right at this moment, the only, the best answer I can give you, which is not the best answer, I mean, it's not such a great answer, but the best answer is, if you look at it holistically, that detail would fall into place as well. I don't think that there's a soft spot in the Torah for fathers sleeping with their daughters.
Okay,
but so I wanted to say one other thing, and that is, so that's the other thing. So the other thing is that what you're touching on is, again, something that Shalom made a big deal about, and everybody afterwards keeps on working on it. And that is the return of myth into Judaism. So it's not just Egypt, it's mythic experience and thinking from everywhere, from every culture that Judaism has been exposed to. There's a certain amount of fighting against myth. Certainly the idea of a polytheistic reality is fought against, by Judaism. No, there's only one. The tree god is not a tree god, and this is not a this, and so on. But nevertheless, those myths are powerful, results of primal human experiences. So you deny them at the risk of, well, what's your better alternative? How do you do justice to the kinds of realities that myths are expressing in some other way? And to a large extent, not to a full extent, but to a large extent, the tone of rabbinic Judaism was taken to be anti-mythic. If you look deeper, it's not as anti-mythic as you might think, but Shalom made that dichotomy. The rabbis were anti-mythic, and then the revenge of the repressed comes back with the mystical tradition. And that's what got him very excited, because it was like, he was happy to root for that kind of, the oppressed. He was rooting for the oppressed. But subsequent scholars have, felt that Shalom had his own, issues to deal with, and that he didn't do full justice. Myth never went away. But yes, there are ways to weigh it this way and ways to weigh it that way. So Egypt and Mesopotamia and Babylonia and all of these cultures and civilizations that were saturated with myth, they absolutely fed into Judaism. Yes.
But that gets back to the first question that I didn't want to force you to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
Because in all of those societies, evil is accepted as a necessary aspect of reality.
Right.
And so the reason that God's justice reveals him is that God's justice accepts evil. That's why the world can be redeemed on Yom Kippur. So I tied the whole thing together.
Right. So the difference in a simple way of answering you, which that's what I love to do, is whether it's permanent or temporary. And the pagan mythic idea is that this is permanent. This is the way it is. And the way Judaism developed, as in my understanding, is that it's temporary. That in the end, the victory of good over evil is assured. It will be total. It won't be like, what's her name in that movie where she keeps on, they kill her and she keeps coming out of the water. And, what's her name? Glenn Close. What's that? Come on, Jen, what's that movie? Craig, what's the movie? It takes her about like half the movie to die finally at the end.
I don't remember. Basic Instinct, or is it the one where she's a bunny boiler?
I don't know. I don't
remember.
or take a different one, Rasputin, right? They killed Rasputin about 50,000 times.
Fatal
Right?
Attraction.
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction, there you go. Yay.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Rich.
the bunny boiler, yeah.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, good. So no, the evil will actually finally really be defeated and will not, come back. But till we get there, you have to wait through the whole movie. That's the difference. I think it's not a small difference. All right. So what do you think? Should we try to go, well, you know what? Yeah, no. Because we're gonna have to just start this up again anyway.
I have a question.
Okay, good. So let's get our money's worth anyway. Yes.
Okay,
Kendra, go ahead.
it's a question that I've probably struggled with since I entered into Judaism. It's about it's about the trickery. It's about Yaakov. Okay, so he.
Well, now the cat wants to listen. Now this is exciting for the cat. Look right next to see. Trickery, shrewdness, cunning. Yes, yes. Now we're getting to something I can relate to. Yes.
I know she wasn't here before. Okay, so I always, I've always wondered, and I'm almost thinking I have an answer about this night that was spent where Yaakov doesn't know that it's Leah. No, he doesn't have an intimate experience of Rachel, but they're different human beings. They're sisters, but there's probably, we get a sense that physicality is pretty different. And I've always thought, how was it that he was so not aware that he spends a whole night, it's so dark that he can't see a thing. He can't tell that this woman is not the woman he loves. There's no murmuring, there's nothing. And the only thing
You're obviously not a man.
No, I'm not. But I came up with something tonight that I was thinking, I wonder if it's, now that we're talking about the not just the Peshat, but that these figures, well, I'm going to call it the mythic piece, but these figures are also have spherotic connections. We have Bina and stuff like that. I'm thinking, was he in the thrall, if you will, of God, that there was no way he was going to see anything about this human? Because I can't figure it out. It's like it's always been too complicated and doesn't make sense to me.
So I think that your question actually, I mean, it touches on things that we keep on discussing in this situation and in other situations.
Right.
But your question actually sees two things as separate when they're not separate.
Well,
that's part of the paradox of what the Zohar is doing.
Okay.
On the simplest level, if we just take the biblical story as a really interesting story of people, and there's tremendous amount of interpersonal drama going on and a lot of interesting hints at psychology. The Torah obviously is not a modern novel, but it gives you a lot of material to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go, this strains credulity. How could this guy go to bed with this woman and not know that it's not the woman that he is besotted with?
Because he's not drunk and it's not an hour.
Right.
It's all
So
night.
some of it you answered already. The guy has not had any real physical intimacy with this woman. He doesn't know really who she is. And that's one side of it. The other side of it is that he's been primed to believe that this really is her. And then he kids himself. This is one of the examples of, love fools him. But what's more to the point and this is part of Jacob's comeuppance, right? After Jacob does all that fooling with his father and so on, he ends up fooling himself. And we are super capable of doing that. So on the most psychological, simple level, if the circumstances are right, if the factors are aligned exactly the way they can be, I don't think it's definitely surprising. It's definitely an interesting story. It's not boring, but it is an indication of the capability of the human being to fool themselves. Now, what the Zohar then does is the Zohar then puts it into that divine realm that you were just talking about. We can fool ourselves about divinity also, says the Zohar. And we can think that we're involved in some kind of divine encounter, but actually we're involved in a different divine encounter. Forget about the fact that sometimes we think we're in a divine encounter and it's not a divine encounter. But actually the joke here that the Zohar has like pumped up the irony even further in saying that if you want to actually completely denude this story of any, human psychology, sexuality, and all that kind of stuff, it's not a melodrama, it's not a soap opera, it's really about a person, enacting divine, connections and movements and so on. What happens? The divine fools itself. So that the parallelism is tight. The parallelism is very, very aligned even on that level. And that's part of what the Zohar is saying, is that you can be besotted not with Rachel, you can be besotted by Shekhinah. Right. And you're so besotted by Shekhinah, you don't even know that you're encountering Bina. Right? So it also ends up becoming, as the Zohar would say, Chadhu. It's all one.
Mm.
All right. So with that, we'll definitely. Okay. Zeig is in stark.
Yasher Koach. Stay